Good morning, everyone. This conversation today is an expert guest talk with my lovely friend and colleague, Julia Rudakova. I have shared all of her credentials and description many times with many people in the past and now leading up to this call because I find her to be fascinating, highly professional, and she's my naturopath as well. I don't even know if I can call you naturopath because you're doing so many more things than just that. It's such a holistic combination of things that, yeah, you're pretty unique in what you do and how you do it. So I will obviously let you do the proper introduction. I will keep adding people to the call. In the meantime, I just want to say welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. To those that are joining right here live, to those who will watch it later, and to those who will jump on later during the call. I just want everyone to feel welcome here, enjoy the information, absorb all the information. And if you have any questions, we're going to open the call later for questions. The way we will run it will be, first of all, Julia will introduce herself a bit better than I did, and she will introduce the subject of the conversation. She will have her talk, and then I have a few questions written down that I'm going to ask, and then I will open the microphone for your questions and you can have an open discussion. Obviously, I will share all the links later for the replay, for how to reach Julia if you want to work with her. And I also want to thank you, Julia, for joining me because I know it's like this call is meant to be a very unique expert call for my mentoring container, but because it's just so important and so interesting, I felt that I had to open it up for everyone. And I know how busy you are in your personal life as well as in your practice. So I really appreciate it. Like I know I just saw your email yesterday. You said that you need to take a break from practice for a while because it's just so much. I'm not surprised. You're doing so much in your life. So I really appreciate you joining us today. And to those of you who are watching the call that don't know me, I'm Valery Topaz. I am the owner of Valery Alignment, founder of Neurofascial Energetics and Posturecraft. And I am running a mentoring container where I have very unique experts in their field to come on and share their expertise when it comes to the holistic nature of human beings. And right now I'm in the process of probably opening up this container to everyone and not just to focus on practitioners because this information is so important for everyone. So without further ado, Julia, please.
Thank you, Val. Well, yeah, it's lovely how you introduced me. I don't know what to add, and it's very similar to yourself, right? It's so much that we have in our toolbox that it's hard to give a very concise line of introduction. But naturopathy is an umbrella term, right? Every naturopath is different, but we do have our basic philosophy about healing and how the body heals and what it does. And unfortunately, recently, naturopathy has undergone a bit of a transformation in terms of it has become a little bit more scientific and science-based, evidence-based, and some of that spirit has faded away because we rely on our tools, not in the traditional sense, but as pharmaceuticals, but from natural realm. So herbs and supplements used as pharmaceuticals instead of in a way that promotes and facilitates. We do a bit of a suppression as well nowadays. We as a tribe of naturopaths that were trained in modern colleges, but I'm kind of a more traditional healer, and education is important for me. So we're talking about gut today, digestion. I think we sat on the name Digesting Life. Yeah, love that. It's just so good. It's one thing that I don't want it to become is that a discussion of microbiome and parasitic cleanses and all that stuff. I really want to bring awareness to what digestion is, what the body is doing, what signs and symptoms mean, right? Because I've worked with so many people, and literally probably 99% would bring gut issues as symptoms when they come to see me. And the other 1% will still find something that is related, right? So everyone's got something to address there. And digesting life. I'm also a linguist. My first education, my first degree is in linguistics. Not sure if you know that. And I love looking at words and what they mean, and especially how it's applied to healing. And you know that in the Russian language, abdomen, like the word for abdomen means life, right? So all the other languages, including English, French, Spanish, German, they use the word abdomen, which is from the Latin, that means conceal, right? Hide. So kind of trying to protect what's vital and important. Yeah, so it's interesting etymology in various languages and how they highlight the function of this area of our body, right? So, and with the digestion, it's a big digestive tract starting from the mouth, ending in the anus, right? And we think of it as something that is inside of us, that is internal, concealed, hidden, right? But I also challenge you to see it as a point of interaction with the world, right? Because like if you imagine an open mouth and the end bit, like we're like a donut, right? We're like a donut, and that's the inside of the donut, our GIT, right? So, and the inside of the donut is exposed to the world as well, right? So this is what comes from the world and what we deal with. And every station of digestion has its function and its purpose, which corresponds to how we think in reality. Because in Rudolf Steiner's anthroposophical medicine, he links thinking to digestion, or digestion to thinking. So they are two rhythmical processes that are very similar in nature, right? And I also love the new medicine. Not sure if you're familiar with the German new medicine, Dr. Hamers, and I think how he put it all together. And all those teachings, you have your metaphysical anatomy, you have GNM, Steiner's, they all overlap. In essence, they conveying similar message to us, right? Just from slightly different angles. And I think that's kind of the unifying thing, is that it is to do with thinking, right? And it is rhythmical, and we need to find that connection, right, between the physical and the emotional and the mental, right? It's our mental gatekeeper, the gut, actually. And then, in science, we have the gut-brain connection, right, that they started talking about just, I don't know, a decade or so ago. Yeah, how all the bacteria, they create an environment that influences our mental state, and they treat even some psychiatric conditions with, I don't know, fecal transplants now, and, alternating microbiome, basically, right? But let's talk about that perspective of our digestion, as, what function each station does and how that translates into pathology that we see in our practice as practitioners, right? So we have the mouth that is receiving and desire for life, right? And what I always say to my clients is that the basic principle of nutrition is that you've got to be hungry. You've got to have the juices. You've got to salivate to receive that food, to start breaking down carbohydrates. So the enzymes for carbohydrates are in the saliva, right? So that mouth, the opening, the receiving, the desire, right, should be there. Then the questions like, what do I desire in life? What's undesirable there that's constantly there that prevents me from digesting, simple, carbs that are energy, right? And then we have the stomach, the first station that after the esophagus, the food goes into the stomach, and that's churning food, breaking down protein, right? We have to have very high hydrochloric acid, not only to do that, to break down protein, which, is amino acids, our building blocks. We've got to have enough of that, but it's also killing pathogens, whatever comes with air, food, water. It has to be strong enough to neutralize that so that it's a safe passage all the way down the GIT, right? And it's interesting, like with the language, going back to the language, what descriptions clients use, like, hard to stomach, hard to digest certain things in life, right? And it is so true, Val, that it's only a tiny percentage that is truly, truly kind of functional, mechanical for some reason due to a trauma or even some congenital malformations in the organs that we see with the digested nutrients, that's mechanical in nature, that needs to, that requires like supplements or herbs on a regular basis. Because everything else that I see is mostly mental and emotional in nature, that we had an event in life that created that shock, right? And we were so isolated and so lacking capacity to break it down for ourselves, to make sense of it, that we internalized it, and the result is a pathology, a diagnosis of, an enlarged liver, right, or whatever, dysbiosis. And of course, it can be explained from the scientific perspective, how stress affects the diversity of our bacteria, for example, right? It's all there. But what brings healing? That's my question. What is healing, holistically healing, not as a short-term healing? Because I think pretty much every practitioner can relate to that, to clients surfing between clinics and trying to find that one thing. So that supplement helped, that protocol was good, but then I regressed, and then something happened, and here again, and it's not working anymore, what used to work. And that's why I'm doing this, to bring the awareness, because there is a lot of coaching and self-coaching that's involved in the healing process. And that's what I want to provide to my clients. And I think your work is very, very similar as well. So we kind of talked about the mouth as desire and receiving, and the stomach as processing the emotions, churning things, breaking down proteins. And then the intestines, they are kind of the discernment. What do we keep? What nutrients we need to absorb through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. That's the small intestine. The large intestine is what we need to get rid of, what we need to dump, right? It's the completion and release, and it's to do with our boundaries, with unfairness, things like that. And there are so many examples that I wanted to bring. And for example, how that translates into simple things like I see a lot of children who have constipation, who are holding on to their stool because at school they're just not comfortable to release, and that's their territory, that's their boundaries violated, and they can't release. And again, in science, we have the psychology, the nervous system, but there are always deeper emotions that are going on that we can see and translate the symptomology into that and help the child or ourselves to overcome that, right? Because we can do the osmolax and that will work beautifully. It works with the water retention and making the stool softer, and the pediatrician would recommend to stay on it for as long as you need to, like for as long as the problem had been occurring. So if the child had been like that for 3 months, so you stay on that, and that should retrain the bowel and all that. But it will work only if there was some sort of resolution that happened within the family, within the child's sort of psyche, and without reversal to the original symptoms, right? So that's kind of this little introduction into the digestive tract from the point of view of its function, as well as how it translates into our thinking and feeling, right? So does it make sense to everyone? Yeah. Oh, Belle is on silent. That's all right. I'll just keep going then.
Do you want me to share a few words on what you said?
Yeah, I just wanted to see how that lands and that we are on the same page with the story.
Absolutely. And it really is opening up my perspective to more things that I'm noticing from my point of view when I work with people on holistic healing, energetically and emotionally. You just added a few more blocks to it. It's fascinating. I'm definitely there with you. I just want to say one thing. Sometimes you're dropping off with your voice, with your microphone.
Really?
So yeah, it's like going down, and then it's a bit hard to hear. So I don't know if there's anything that you can do about it.
Okay, can I
Just make it a
just
bit more
keep
challenging.
talking a little bit, and maybe I just need to hold it so that it doesn't drop on the wire
Yes, like
here?
right now it's
Yeah.
perfect. So if you can do that, it would
Okay.
be
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you, Jules.
Great. Amazing. So I think what I want to bring forward to the group, because we'll learn the best from examples, all right? And maybe we'll just do a few little case studies to demonstrate, right? And then when we can do a bit more theory or whatever is there, the cards for us today. So the most common complaints when people come with digestive issues is first gas and bloating, right? And then we have the constipation and diarrhea. So that's the two parts of the intestines, the small intestines, the upper ones, and the large intestines, the bowel. So I want to break that down and to demonstrate how that translates into our experiences in life, right? And as I said before, we have beautiful botanicals that help modulate gut microbiome, the bacteria in the gut, in a way that they may suppress the ones that are considered opportunistic, and not good in large amounts. We need them all, by the way. It's not a good idea to eliminate anything. If they're there for a reason. And they can stimulate the growth of the beneficial ones, right? And then there's so many mechanisms there that I'm not going to go into, but they do work. That's what I'm saying. When people start on them, they feel the relief instantly. And then the idea is that in some botanicals, you can't stay for a long time with them. It's not beneficial for us overall. And then when we phase them out, reduce the dosing, and with a view that the body needs to take over, right? That's the whole goal. That's, in my eyes, that's the freedom, right? Health is basically freedom. Yeah, not to be dependent on any protocol, on any therapy all the time. Like we have our, well, let's call it self-care, right? Or just life care thing that I have for myself. I recognize the importance of broad spectrum light. I do take it as medicine every day. There is nutrition, there is movement. Yeah, so all the things that are kind of prescription lifestyle medicine now, but I just call it life. It's just common sense. So, and that's the goal, to get to that freedom so that you can live your purpose. You can do what you are here to do in life. And we all have different purposes, and it just need to be found or allowed to be found. Yeah, because sometimes we just hide away from that. So when we move away from the use of botanicals, enzymes, homeopathics, with homeopathy it's a little bit different because it's such a deep modality, and we don't have the bounce back from that as often as from botanicals and nutraceuticals, let's call them, all the supplements, minerals, enzymes. And when we have a rebound effect, when we have a regression, when we have a reappearance of the symptoms, then we know that it's not the physiology anymore, right? It's psychology in every single case. And that's the hardest part, because it requires mental energy to work through that, right? And I found that in a modern person, that capacity has been reduced through all the noise that we're experiencing with pollutants and noise in the social media that overstimulates us, and that energy is not there for us anymore. So again, it's just another topic of where to find our energy, where to reclaim it, but it's outside of our scope for today. So when we move away and the body doesn't take over, then we need to look at what's been happening. So if we go back to bloating and gas, very, very common. So what is the sensation of that? It's that distension in the stomach, like a balloon. It feels so full. It feels painful. It feels like I can't take in anymore, right? It's full. It's stuffed, right? So, and when we have that, the person normally verbalizes, like when we talk about life, and I always ask about stresses because that is important. I need to know whether there is a current stressor that is very acute, or it's something in the background that's been there for years. So that helps me to determine the stage of their fatigue, of the endocrine system, right? So, and when they start talking about that, people who come with gas and bloatedness, they always say that, like literally, I can't stomach that. I can't take that in, right? That sort of wording that they use. And I find it very, very interesting. And the upper digestive, the upper intestines, that's to do with, we have solar plexus area there, right? Has to do with that anticipation, with the worry, right? It's something to do with the future, oftentimes. And that inability to digest and process the current situation. Normally it's to do with something that's not too far in the past, right? It may differ though, if, but normally, as a rule. And can't take anymore that distension, big tummy, a lot of gas, a lot of discomfort, swollen feeling, right? And the question here is like, what am I chewing on mentally all the time, right? So the food is in the stomach, we need to churn it, it's churning. So what am I churning in my mind? What do I go back to very frequently and can't process, can't digest, yeah? Too big to digest, like swallow a big chunk, right? So that sort of analysis that we can do in our mind, right? Because we can literally translate those sensations to our life events. And it's not very difficult. Like there are so many books written, and you can go and look up all the questions, all the prompts, and that's a great start. If you're doing it on your own, if you feel that you can do it, you want to try it, absolutely. I think that independency, that feeling of, empowerment that it gives you, it's healing in itself when you feel that you want to approach that on your own. So that's the upper intestines, the small intestines that, we have a label of SIBO on that. There are so many labels. I'm not even going to tell them because it just gives that power to all the language of diagnosis. And I'm not pro that because it is truly like what we experience. It's either that chronic stage of not being able to process something, or it's the stage when we finally exhaled. We know that we made peace with something, that we resolved something for us, right? And then we have that symptom. So, for example, like the liver is kind of up in the abdomen as well, under the right rib cage. And enlarged liver is another big thing that people come with because they had all the ultrasounds. It's there. They know they have elevated liver enzymes. They have fatty liver or whatever. But from the point of view, what the body does is that whenever we have an enlargement, a growth of some sorts, that's the body's way of increasing the area, increasing the capacity to perform the function that it's meant to perform, right? So the liver conjugates cholesterol, processes fats, it produces bile, right, to literally make use of fats, and we need fats. Fats are so much more important than water, people, right? It's the integrity of your cellular walls, of how things go through the wall, in and out of the cells, if we want to go down to zoom into this tiny little level of us. So liver is very important, and when it grows bigger than its original size, it means that the body is just trying to increase the capacity to process stuff, right? But our medicine says a pathology, anything outside of a reference range is bad. And then what happens is we get re-traumatized by the words, by the diagnosis, and we repeat the cycle. The body always responds to what you think every second, right? So that's kind of an example of small intestines and liver now too. And with the lower GIT, this is super, super territorial. This is your boundaries. This is the unfairness of life, of events, of what happened. These are like disputes, legal disputes in the family, disputes at work, court proceedings, all that sort of things. But most often than not, like I see a lot of women in my practice. I do treat men as well, but obviously we attract certain energy, and it's a lot to do, I see it, with the relationship within the family dynamic. And right, so it's like an example that just sprang to my mind was about a woman whose partner was emotionally and financially abusive, and to the point that she did develop certain growths in her colon. And it's, again, just bringing that to the awareness. It's not with the purpose of finding who's at fault, right? Because it's all our perception. And it's with a purpose of bringing up and facilitating healing. Yeah. A person can go and seek counseling by all means to make sense of that all, or, better some sort of family constellations, or, some other deeper work that can be done there. But it's just an example of what can happen when there is this unresolved, chronic, territorial conflict that's going on, right? And the colon is to do with release, yeah. What has been staying there that shouldn't be there anymore, what should be released, right? What's no longer useful, what's no longer useful in life. And there is always fear associated with that, of getting rid of something, but what if I need it? What if it's like, not going to be as good without it? Or, it's literally poisoning, contaminating, right, your life. Because if we're dealing with constipation, it's literally the waste sitting in your colon, and it does get reabsorbed through the wall back into the bloodstream, right? So it's actually the first thing that I work with is to make the person go regularly. That's number one priority when I start working with people, regardless of the reason they came with, whether it's hormonal issues, whether it's mental, anxiety, anything like that. Anxiety is an interesting word too. It's funny how I used it, because I always move people away from that word. But I think I use the language so that it's more relatable, because it is in circulation. And yes, just for the purpose of being more relatable, I suppose. That's what I used it. And can I just go back to the liver and gallbladder for a second? Because that's one of the most frequent things that I see, and especially in women, and especially gallbladder and gallstones, right? Did you ever notice that women would develop them often after birth? And that's often linked to hormonal changes, right? I'm like, gallbladder, hormonal changes, interesting. So what is the mechanism there, the physiology? Kind of far-fetched. So they obviously built a little bit of a bridge there, right? But what happens to a woman who gives birth, especially in our modern world, especially hospitals, right? That is a massive invasion into the boundaries, right? Into its boundaries. And I know it's kind of made normal nowadays. It's not normal for me, and it's very hard to get that message across because there is a lot of fear associated with birth, with, children, babies, and it's that innate protection that we have. But that crossing of the boundaries, right, that's to do with formation of the gallstones. Most often than not, it has very little to do with the actual hormonal imbalances. And that's when I noticed younger women start developing them, and they all sometimes have to have their gallbladder removed after birth, shortly after birth. That's when young women lose their organs. And for me, to preserve organs that we have, that's a priority. They are all there for a reason. Yes, you can survive, not live, survive without one. Yeah, but energetically, we need to have all of them, right? So gallbladder is often to do with standing your ground. Yeah, and in birth process at the hospital, it's so difficult to stand your ground. Yeah, you need to have an advocate for that. I know it's a very controversial topic, but I want to speak about that because it's very important, and that's how it translates into the development of, totally unrelated to your reproductive system, a disease, right? With the gallbladder. So gallbladder is to do with our courage, with action, with being courageous and brave in life. And oftentimes, even though we open any sort of Louise Hay's book on metaphysical anatomy, Yvette Rose's book, if we open them and we go through the meaning, the emotions that are linked to gallbladder, and we can find that in our life. But if the person has that courage enough to take action, even though the emotions are there won't be that pathology formed in terms of gallstones. It's that stagnation and inaction that stimulates the formation of, like, when the bile composition changes, right, and it crystallizes into stones. So that's kind of that effect of the emotional stagnation and physical lack of action as well. So with the gallbladder, it's always the examples. It's like when the boundaries are crossed all the time, and living with a difficult member of the family, and feeling like you are trapped in certain business arrangement or in a workplace, like you feel like there is no way out. Yeah. And normally when I speak to a person and we start unpacking that, is it true? Right? We start talking about their particular situation, because it's all good and to say all the generic stuff. But when we open that Pandora box And it's very, very clear, it becomes clear that it's not true, that you're not trapped, that you can go and apply for another job, right? It's just that fear and, the discomfort of doing that stops us from it. And when we give the person the permission that it's okay, it's not a failure, it's just what you need to do for yourself, and maybe there is something better in there for you. You don't know. Yes, you have this financial, for example, if we keep talking about the job security and all that, you have that security right now. But what if? And I had a couple of people coming back to me, and I found another job, and people are so much nicer there. And so it's so much better for their professional growth, right? And then they can go up the ladder if they want to, for example, right? So that sort of thing. Or, caring for others with this huge irritation, resentment on the inside. That's kind of the gallbladder thing as well. And, moms can relate to that because moms are carers, primary carers for years and years and years, right? And the irritation is about your own needs normally. Yeah, and again, it's
Jules,
not too.
can you bring the microphone closer to your mouth?
Thank you.
It's such important things, and when it drops out, I'm like, no, not now.
So yes, I was talking about the gallbladder and the idea of the aspect of caring, the concept of caring about others and feeling irritation inside. And normally it's mothers, it's not being able to tend to your own needs while you are the primary carer. And again, it's not about being a superwoman, creating miracles, forgetting about your children. It's just some little reframing that we need to do with people. And often it just resolves the issue of an inflamed gallbladder and liver. Yes, we use some gentle stuff. It's not that I just leave people to go and figure it out on the mental and emotional level. All the things, all the tools of trade that I use, they're so, so helpful. But the purpose of this talk is to bring awareness to the fact that we need to dive deeper if we want long-term resolution of the symptoms, right? And stop surfing between the clinics and practitioners, and to achieve the freedom. Yeah, because for me, again, health is freedom. That's what it is for me. It's not the absence of symptoms or pains, because we're alive, right? And as long as we live, we're gonna overcome challenges. That's the whole point of being here, right? And being better. Yeah. So I can just, how I started with the organs and going from the mouth down to the colon, what sort of they do, the function and the mental function. So I just leave you with, the three main ones, like the stomach would say, can I take it in? And the liver, the main thing that transforms food and detoxes things, they say, what do I do with this now? So if you have a question like, I don't know what to do with it, right? That's your mid-abdomen that is affected. And the intestines is all to do with what's to keep, what's to give away. Is it useful? Is it not? That's the question. And it requires so much honesty with yourself, an enormous amount of honesty. Right? To me, that's the only way to live this life. Got to be really, really honest with yourself.
Jules, That is fantastic information. And there are so many things that came up from it for me that I'm thinking where to even start, but I will probably start with the last thing that you said, with honesty, because I would like to hear your perspective on that. What I find in the clinic when I deal with people, when I'm not dealing with people, I'm dealing with people's issues and helping them understand what's happening, is that usually people, they really want to have that honest conversation with themselves. And where I find that I need to step in is when they're unable. So there's a level of disconnect and shutdown where I think all of us can relate to that from our side as well, the practitioners, yeah, because we're all people, and we can all see that honesty, it's a work in progress. There are things that you don't know until you know them, and it's a combination sometimes of it's not the right time, it's not the right information, I can't digest it yet, it's too much. But also where I find that it's so important sometimes to do work with an external person, another practitioner, is first of all because people can see from the side what you can't, and it's sometimes so easy to see something that a person cannot see. And the other thing is, I feel like a lot of the times people don't have capacity because their own systems, you can say nervous system, because again, as you said, now it's really fashionable to talk about nervous system, but I call it the unified system because it's on all levels. And sometimes you need another human to be right there with you to expand your capacity, to even have the thought, the honest thought. Because a lot of the times I know there are people that find it easier to be by themselves and to be in peace and quiet. I know for sure I need quiet to feel into myself, to have information. But at other times, if there's if we don't have the capacity, we need another person there to expand our capacity, the right person. Because if we did have the capacity to get that information, we already would. But there's a reason why we don't. So honesty is it's a really tricky one. Yes, Kate, exactly. It's the safety. It's the safety. And I feel like safety is something that is a way, safety is a generic word that includes in it capacity. Because if you don't have another person that can offer you more space for the same information to be processed, it's like you can get to a point where you start blaming yourself. I know definitely that I've done it multiple times, and you, Jules, know because I talk to you about these things, how it can be frustrating when you know that there's something there and you really want to be honest with yourself, but it's like you can't reach in and grab this bit. And then it it leads us to this other thing that you mentioned with symptoms, that as long as you're alive, you will have symptoms showing up to show you different things, because when you can't get to that honesty with yourself mentally, your body will start speaking in other ways. So for instance, if your boundaries are crossed, you can see it on your skin. So maybe before that it was in your digestion, but your digestion is not something that you can see in the mirror. So then the body starts
You can
pushing it
feel
out through the
it.
skin.
It's painful. Yeah. So with the digestion, so yes, you can see visually or you can experience that somatically. Yeah. So you can feel it. Can I just go? That's so true about, someone being present in your circle. So a practitioner, a friend, anyone, right? Who would allow you to expand, to be honest. And I want to just go back where I see it starts from. And, psychology tells us is, when we're little and we're given a family that we need to be part of, I believe, right? But not necessarily every child, and you're a mum as well, right? And I have siblings and they have children, and I can see how the dynamic is like not every child can relate to their parents, and not every parent can relate. So we're given some human beings sometimes, and we're like, they're so different. Like,
Mhm.
like I can understand intellectually, spiritually, I have all that. But sometimes, oh my God, it's like from another planet. What do I do with that? Right. And they will feel it, right? They will feel it. And the feeling is like, you're not like the ugly duckling, remember that um, fairy tale? Yeah, the story from
Mhm.
kids' books about the ugly duckling. And you like this ugly duck, and no one tells you that it's okay to be like it because you're going to be like a swan, right? You're just, this family of ducks, but you're not a duck, right? And that kind of feeling that you don't belong and you're not under it, something's wrong with you, it kind of is carried with you all along. And and that desire not to be bad, like everyone's got it. And for me, like through my personal journey, it's just that expanding that permission field of not being good and being bad, and it's okay and it's not bad. It's against labels, but we'll stick to those labels for the purpose of explaining what they are, right? And it's just, you need someone. So that's why in our modern life, like all these tiny nuclear families and the absence of all the aunties and the grandmothers that would just, I just come here, just, have a cookie and you're fine, you're good, because parents can't see that, but someone will tell you that it's all right, and you're like, oh, okay, it's all right then. And that the whole layer will dissipate, and you're not going to carry it throughout life. And we don't have that, yeah. So it could be friends, it could be someone, it could be a teacher. As an adult, that would be your practitioner who could tell you that it's fine, that all the shit that you perceive as shit as we go through, it's okay, right? And then that healing can occur, and then that honesty will shine through, because the honesty will not come through that filter of I need to be good. So if that filter is very, very strong and present, that I need to be good, it's not okay not to be good, then the honesty is not going to happen. And it's going to be a trip down, all the supplements and therapies and manual therapies to relieve the pain and all the things, right? And again, it's just what is. It's not wrong. It's not right. It's just what is. And just seeing that and understand that, as understanding of that helps us get a bit closer to the truth, to the honesty, right? So we're all seeking truth here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really does lead to a way bigger conversation from spiritual perspectives, right? Because you can see how in this realm, the dual realm, where we have polarity and duality, there's this right and wrong. So why do we even live that experience where there is right and wrong? And then from a higher perspective, like level 2 spirituality with oneness and unity, it's a fact, it's a truth, but it does not dismiss this level of duality. And then above it, another layer where it's everything just in simplified symbols, it still does not dismiss not the unity and not the duality. And it's like, how do we experience all of that? And this is where a lot of the times I go into thoughts about this whole structure and how much of it I can see in actual real life people and their stories playing out, how much of it sometimes is by design, and then also because of the existence of layers. When we're in the dual realm, we can feel like we're a subjected to life and external factors and how they come at us and the environment that they create for us. And then we suffer the consequences, when actually if we are able to step into that higher perspective, we can see that the circumstances were created by us. It's our own soul and our own higher self that's created it. And then we kind of have to hold the paradox that yes, we have trauma and trauma responses and all these things that show us symptoms that we need to deal with. And at the same time, we designed that as an initiation for ourselves as well. And it creates that higher perspective that kind of liberates us from it. And when it comes to what you said, another thing, when you said about it, about safety and honesty being not just from practitioners, but from other people as well, I often say that if more people would actually have the ability, capacity, and the willingness to do that for other people in the most natural way, the way we do in a community setting, most likely we won't need practitioners. All of our work exists only because people are not taking this role that exists in a village setting. And I'm not talking about reciprocal transactional setting. I'm talking about a village where every person just embodies who they are naturally, and you gravitate to the people that you resonate with. That grandmother that, as you said, can give you that cookie and just be present with you, and she has the exact vibe that you need. I actually heard not long ago in a talk that Teal Swan, the spiritual teacher, that she did, and how she describes the experience of being a child in a family like prison, like jail. You're born, you get that family that, again, from a higher perspective you chose, but still in your dual experience, you are stuck in this family. You might completely not resonate with the people. They don't get you. They condition you in the worst type of ways, and there's nowhere to run. Yeah, and then we have to unpack this whole thing. And that whole situation would probably not even happen if we have enough people around us. So even that awareness, if we bring it into our lives, it doesn't mean that we have to live like a tribe now and all do communal cooking and stuff. But there are so many things that we can do for other people around us. Just open the door for other kids in the neighborhood. I don't know, just like we always make sure that our kids still have time with each other, like with the kids and the parents, and they can talk to us. You know, we usually don't try to separate adult hangouts and kid hangouts. It's because we want everyone to be together, to have that community.
Well, that's I think yours and mine kind of vision to have an aware community, right? Like conscious community, to gather people around who want to grow together, right? Through that conscious lens. And yeah, that's needed 100% to create your tribe. It's kind of, diput goody. But also I just wanted to mention, I think there's always a need for an objective observer, right? Who is not linked with you by, blood or relationship.
I can't hear you, love. I can't hear you.
So you need an observer who's objective, who's not linked to you by blood or relationship ties, whether it's friendship, whether it's work relationship or, intimate relationship. There's always been a healer in the village or a seer, right? An objective person who kind of knew everyone, but wasn't too linked to them, right?
They weren't involved. They were always on the sidelines, not to get too.
Yeah, they're not involved. They just observe. They just see what's happening, the dynamics, right? But they're not part of that dynamic. So, and I think that's our job. That's what we do, right? An observer, an objective eye, right, to the situation that is brought on the table by our people who come to see us. And we're so fortunate and blessed to be there. Yes, it's a privilege, isn't it?
It's a privilege as well as a responsibility, because it means that by default, you have to work on yourself all the time. You don't have the privilege of people that don't do that work, that don't choose to be observers for others, of just let your own stuff linger, because then you bring that lens into the clinic, and you never want to have that, because you always see people through filters. So the less filters you have, or the broader they are, the better it is for people, and that ties into safety. or at least you need to have the tools. Like usually what I teach practitioners is how to step into neutrality. Like even if you have your story, how to completely jump out of it and be able to be a completely neutral observer. So usually even when I work with people, when I leave, I forget most of the things because it does not relate to my persona. So I can't retain that information because it's too foreign, especially when I say
Right?
higher.
I always wonder, like, I talk to a few practitioners and they're like, they know every case, like all the things, all the details. I need to go and reread things because I disassociate, like, it's just a lot, right? That's what I do. I always
It's
need
not
to go
necessarily a
back
lot.
and
It can be
re
too foreign.
refamiliarize. Yes, yes, that's a good word as well. And what I kind of wanted to add is we can only take people as far as we've come, right? And, expanding that honesty with ourselves. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch upon if that was the practitioner's course. But I think it's relevant to everyone, even if you're not a practitioner, in terms of your relationship in life with other people, with friends, for example, or work, because again, your capacity to be honest with yourself will bring certain friends in your life, certain acquaintances, certain work relationships, which, we only have two things in life, love and money, right? That's what we say in your emotional technique when we start diving into different emotions, right? Is relationship and something to do with earning the living, which is originally your purpose, right?
Yeah.
Ideally, you
Living
do
in purpose.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do that to to leave some legacy. Even if it's just like a legacy, I don't mean that you need monuments and, books and stuff and recognition. It's just legacy for this lifetime, right? To touch people, to create a better environment, maybe even for others to do certain work, right? So that's kind of your contribution, right? It doesn't have to be anything huge and massive, right? There is this joke that, talking about purpose, I think it's so important. I just want to say that, when a person died and lived a good life, had money and, built houses and children and enjoyed it, but when he got to heaven he's like, God, so what was my purpose? Like, yes, I enjoyed it and the business was good and kids, but like, I'm just, at the end of it, and what was my purpose? And he's like, oh, remember that interstate train that you took on a business trip? Oh, yeah, yeah. And remember there was that person and you were behind him in the queue to the toilet? Yeah, and remember, like, he dropped the towel and it was very distressed and you picked it. Yeah, so that was your purpose. You know, it's just like you can be like that stepping stone on
Yeah.
someone's, not committing suicide or not like, losing it in that moment and then having a breakthrough. So that person just enjoyed life and had a good life because he fulfilled that purpose. And I
Yeah.
think I mean, it's funny, it's ridiculous, it's extreme, but I think it's a great illustration that we sometimes just try to, with all the self-development books and grandiose sort of schemes, it can be really small, and it's that humbleness that I think we need to stick to in this life, that brings the purpose forward to us.
Absolutely.
Not trying too hard.
Can I go over a few notes and questions that I had in advance, and then I will open the mic for anyone who has any questions? It's a shame Kate left us. I'm pretty sure she would have questions.
Ah, yeah,
Um,
because we went over 1 hour, hey?
of course, duh. Actually, you know what? No, let's open the microphone because I have so many things written down here that each one of them deserves a whole conversation. So How about I'll ask you guys if any of you have questions directly to Julia, and then only if we want to go over time, maybe we'll just do another call. But let me give you the opportunity to ask anything that has to do with everything we spoke about, as well as anything else that you want to ask her on any other subject. You're welcome to do it now. Giselle, I know that you had a question. Would you like to open your mic and ask?
You can type if you don't feel like talking.
I'm sorry. I just had a question about peptides, to be honest, because everybody's on them at the moment. And my brothers are kind of pushing a little bit. They're going, oh, yeah, it's going to fix your stomach issues and reset your gut biome and all the rest of it. But I'm not quite sure about it. So would love your thoughts.
So what is your gut feeling about it? Can you share?
My gut is telling me no. Yeah, something is just kind of like it's synthetic. It can't be right for me, and I've come a long way already. So it's going to be a matter of time. But it's like they're all on it, and they think it's going to be an easy fix. And for the most part, it has been. But like, kind of, what is it? What are the long-term effects of it? And like, does it actually help at all?
Well, when we put something in a very concentrated form in the body, can be anything, right? Peptides are a bit more complex than just a mineral, a single mineral or vitamin. And there are always pathways. So if we favor one path, right, what happens to the other? Right? So with peptides, it's not something foreign, it's something that's in us already, right? But we just give the body that concentrated amount. So what happens to all the other pathways? Are they blocked? Are they diverted? Right? Short term, people may experience huge relief from the right supplementation, right intervention. But again, it just depends on what's happened to the psyche, right? Along the lines of what we're saying. And to me, from my experience, I've seen a lot of adverse effects from doing highly concentrated substances. And how I see it, it may be warranted in cases when a person chose to do on their own volition, chose to do like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, things like that.
Jules, you're dropping out.
Which are so massive, right? It's not like we're dealing with a symptom. We're dealing with an input from the outside, like a chemotherapy or radiotherapy, something like that. And to offset that, I can see how it would make sense to do an intravenous vitamin C, for example, right? To help the body. But that's not the holism that I'm talking about, that I'm teaching. It's just a situation that came up to me out of your question, right? And I'm trying to pool my knowledge and resources to answer that. So again, it's not my expertise at all. So I would stick to your gut feeling because we're talking about the gut.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
And yeah, we saw that. I mentioned that in a different conversation, how we saw that with Ozempic, right? When something turned into this massive craze and people said that it's helping them so much. And now we're hearing about the side effects of it. So yet another thing.
Did you see that about peptides? In my stories recently, this week, I shared that little slide, where, God is like, you've got everything to heal in your body. And the dude is like, but what about the peptides from China? Right?
Yeah, there's always something. There's always something like that, huh? Like that was the missing link. That was the thing that will fix everything. And I guess my question with that as well would be, so how do you differentiate when it's something like that intervention that's either not natural, synthetic, or even natural but highly concentrated, versus for instance, homeopathy or botanical substances that are helping you? What would be the difference? Why do we sometimes need something external and not rely fully on our own inner resources? Where are our resources lacking, if at all?
Yeah. Homeopathy is highly diluted, right? It's not concentrated at all. And the only natural concentrated thing I can think of is herbal extract. Yeah, it can be very, very concentrated as opposed to just a brewed herb or poultice, things like that. Yeah, so we can extract and we can take a high dose of things like that. But everything else is not natural. Everything else is lab made, right? And even now they get in a constituent and they trademark, an extract from turmeric and different curcuminoids, right? Or from boswellia, they would extract certain thing and they would trademark it the way they do it. And it's, again, it will help short term to take the pain away. But what it also does is the totality of all the constituents in the herb, they are synergists. And when you take one, you're missing out. So some buffering will be missing. That's how I see it. Yeah. And you can create damage with that. I don't believe that you can create damage with a whole herb, not an extract, just a herb. I mean, there are poisonous herbs, of course, and stuff like that. But it's very hard to overdo, and your sense of taste, your sense of smell, your different sensations will put a stopper to that. Yeah, when we listen to ourselves. So why do we need? The question was, why do we actually just do this, right? Well, we do get to a chronic stage, right? And I love homeopathy because it is energy medicine. Like we can do little dilutions like X potency stents, but when you have the molecules of the original substance there, right, in a diluted form. Why I like doing that is because, we talk about vital force in homeopathy, in herbal medicine, and we do give away that energy to our overthinking, to dealing with different pollutants, toxicants in our life, chemical or emotional ones. And that helps to bring the momentum back. That helps restore that etheric body, right? To connect different levels of consciousness. That's homeopathy, right? Or, the TCM, acupuncture, any sort of vibrational thing like tuning forks. I love them. And that's very, very useful tool. They are all very useful tools to do that, because even to get the grasp of what we're talking about, you need energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And often when I speak to a client, you can sense when they phase out that the ceiling has been reached. So they could understand, but beyond a certain point. And, with practitioners as well, right?
Yeah.
So with anyone, you just reach, because we always grow, we always get more understanding of who we are and how we work and what the universe is, right? And then we reach the ceiling. It's like, okay, I need to step away and process that and do my thing and apply that in my life, see how that works. And then I'll come back to where I left it, right? So, and homeopathy helps to speed that up, not speed that up, to facilitate your path a little bit, yeah. Herbs, they're physical as well as energetic. They're amazing, right? And, different parts of the plant, they have different energy. We have roots, which like help you get grounded and rooted. Yeah, we have berries and aerial parts and flowers, and they have all their meaning, the doctrine of signatures as well, how they look. So that's all very, very useful. It's like with the nutrition, right? We reach for different foods to help different organs and system heal, right? So for the lungs, I do a lot of respiratory cases in my clinic, and the lung foods, they're white foods, they're your fennel, they're your onions, garlic, things like that, leeks, yes, all the white ones, and pungent. So yeah, it's all makes sense. It's the world that we live in. It's the system, right?
Law of similars and stuff. Yeah. Guys, do you have any more questions? Amanda, Steph, Rosanna?
No questions, but thanks very much. It's been really interesting. A lot to absorb.
Thank you. Thank you for taking part and being here.
Yeah, thanks very much for organizing it.
Thanks, Linda.
We'll probably need to do a few more because there's so much to say. Jules, are you up for me to go over the list and see if there's anything else?
I think it's time you just read them out and we'll see what we can answer.
Okay. So, you know what? I will just bring up one last thing and we can be done with that. I found it a very interesting question when people ask, how do I know whether I can trust my intuition, my gut feeling, or is it my microbiome speaking, my bugs speaking, or is it my parasite speaking? How can I tell whether it's my intuition or those other beings, and it's their personality, their cravings, their needs that are speaking from inside of me?
Yeah, whether it's your truth or someone else's truth, right?
Yeah.
I think when questions like that arises, I just go back a little bit to the fact that there is a bit of a fixation that I see in my practice on cleanses, on eliminating certain groups that live in the gut, eradicating parasites. So I think that in itself needs to be sat with and addressed. That's where I would start. Not trying to discern whether it's your gut feeling or someone else's, like your gut bacteria or things like that. So with the need to be clean, yeah, not to be dirty, right? So obviously, and that's the lower GIT issue there, that territorial conflict, unfairness and violation of your boundaries. So when we make those little critters that live in us, and they do help us, even the baddies, they have a function. Some of them do participate in manufacturing of vitamins, right? So when we make them the culprit, what are we avoiding in life? when we turn that conflict inside, right? Making ourselves basically the enemy, because they are in us. So we're fighting ourselves. Right? And that is hard. It is the harshest thing to see yourself as an enemy, because that's you, right? Your connection to the world, as we, that donut, we are, so that's what's inside, but they're kind of outside and inside as well. And so I would just go there first and actually find the violation, boundary, breach. Yeah, what's there? And I truly believe that the question will not be there after that, whether it's my intuition or not.
Yeah, that's literally seeing the high perspective. All of a sudden, the lower question just dissolves. The need for it dissolves. Yeah. Again, it's just something that I see all the time. When you understand the high perspective, the lower perspective disappears. It just integrates into the bigger one and answers itself. Jules, thank you so, so much. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
I have
So
a whole
lovely to
list of
chat to you.
things now.
Yay.
I hope we can do another one
Now we
because
can.
there's just so many things to address. Thank you so much. I hope you'll have a wonderful day. And thank you everyone else for joining. Lovely seeing you. You will get the recording in the email. And see you soon, my lovely.
See ya. Bye, everyone.
Bye.